Hey, Joe, I need you to do a live shot in front of the courthouse at 5.
I can't. I'm editing today. Tom and I switched shifts so that I could go to the dentist. I'm on painkillers.
Okay. Shoot. I need to find somebody right now. There's Brad. Hey, Brad? I need you to do a live shot in front of the courthouse for the 5. Here's a site survey from yesterday, and Karen's the reporter.
Well, I haven't done a live shot in a couple of months. I'll need a few minutes to go over things with engineering.
That's fine.
Tell Karen I'll meet her at the truck in 15 minutes. Okay, I got it all now.
Remember, take your time. When you get out there, look around. It's not easy, but if you keep your head and don't get distracted, you'll do just fine. And your checklist is on your key ring.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Good luck.
All right, thanks.
Okay, I'm here. Let's go.
I'm almost ready. Just give me another minute.
Okay, but remember, we're in the first block.
We'll make it.
Truck 2, what's your ETA?
We're about to pull out now. We'll be there in about 10 minutes.
Come on, let's go. I don't want to be late on another story.
Okay, here's our spot from the site survey.
Finally.
Excuse me, sir, you can't park here. We're keeping this lot closed for security reasons.
Oh, great. Now we got to find a spot on the street.
We made it. Listen, I'm going to tell the desk. How soon can you be ready?
Just as soon as I make sure we can get a live shot out of here without getting killed.
Come on, we do live shots here all the time.
Yeah, and the conditions are different every time. If we start cutting corners, we could get hurt. But we can still do this right and get the job done.
Great. All the other stations are going to get the best spots.
I don't care about the other stations. They're not responsible for my life or your life. Well, this isn't going to work here, because if I raise the mast, we're not going to have 10 feet of clearance. Look, I'll tell you what, why don't you go inside the courthouse and find our contact? I'm going to look for another space. We'll work something out.
Great.
ENG, this is Brad in truck 2 over at the courthouse. We're not having luck in any of the usual spaces, but we're working on it. We'll have something for you. It's just going to take some time, because I got to run cable.
Okay, 10-4, do your best and let us know when you're ready.
Let's see where the power lines are here. One here. We got plenty of clearance. There's good clearance for the mast. Let's see what else we got around here. Engineering, this is Brad in truck 2. I'm ready to transmit.
A life sentence. This is Karen Miller at the Juvenile Courthouse. Now back to you.
And we're clear.
Good job, Brad. Thanks. You did a good job.
Yeah, no sweat.
Hey, Brad, you about ready to go?
Yeah, wait a minute. Let me walk around the truck first. Make sure I have everything.
Okay.
Okay, I got everything.
Yeah, but did you lower the mast?
Truck 2, I'm sorry to do this to you, but don't break for dinner. You gotta go to City Hall. The mayor's having a press conference.
Oh, man.
Jeez.
Hello, I'm Mark Bell, speaking on behalf of Salt River Project. SRP is a major public power utility company serving Arizona electric customers and water shareholders since 1903. Electric safety has always been a top priority at SRP, and electric safety should always be a top priority for ENG operators too. I've been studying ENG operations and accidents for many years. The scenario you've just seen happens hundreds of times every day. A live shot under the usual pressures confronting news crews. It looks pretty easy, but we all know that something could have gone wrong any step of the way. Let's take another look at what we just saw. Joe's taking a prescription drug, which may affect his ability to do certain jobs. It might even be illegal for him to drive a vehicle, and he might not be able to think clearly while operating equipment, especially in public places. And one other thing.
Shifts so that I could go to the dentist. I'm on painkillers.
Okay.
He spoke up. Joe had an obligation to tell his employer that he was taking a painkiller. Make sure you know your station's policy about being under the influence of prescription drugs, which may affect your job performance. And here's Brad, the inexperienced substitute, because he hasn't worked on the truck for a few months. It was good that he went over things with the chief engineer as a refresher. He also had a checklist covering key points of operating the truck. Now, what about the site survey? Each newsroom should keep a log of microwave shots to avoid wasting time looking for the best parking spot and other repetitious activities. These surveys are very helpful, but many times you'll find yourself out on a shoot and the site survey won't apply because of unpredictable conditions. Then what do you do?
Remember, take your time. When you get out there, look around. It's not easy, but if you keep your head and don't get distracted, you'll do just fine.
That's a big problem, distraction. In fact, dealing with distraction is probably the biggest challenge facing an ENG truck operator. It's also a leading cause of industrial accidents. What are the distractions for ENG truck operators? Time pressure, equipment challenges, weather, story logistics, traffic, driving, emergency services people, scanners, cell phones, pagers, bystanders, or just plain old inattention. And how about nutrition? When was the last time you had a decent meal? Poor eating habits can lead to mental and physical fatigue, which can affect your judgment. In fact, one of the first signs of fatigue is errors in judgment. So when you're facing a problem, you might rush through the thinking process and settle on the first, not necessarily the best solution. Errors in judgment are a leading cause of industrial accidents. You can prevent them just by preventing the causes of fatigue. Because the challenges and distractions in the field are different from those in the newsroom, it's a good idea for assignment editors and producers to go out in the field a few times to see the situation firsthand. They'll have a much better understanding of what you're up against.
Come on, let's go. I don't want to be late on another story.
One more thing. How fast does your station policy allow you to drive? ENG truck drivers are not emergency services people. Broadcasters don't have the authority to break the speed limit while covering a story. And they don't get special parking privileges either. It sounds so simple to just go out and find a parking spot. But in the history of ENG, it has not always been that simple. All of the incidents you're about to see were the result of distraction during setup. In this particular case, it seems the operator didn't pay attention to the fact that he parked right next to a power pole with wires connecting to it from 3 different directions. In this next incident, the operator stated that he could not possibly have parked the truck where you see it here. Inattention, distraction, time pressure. Now in this incident, a veteran engineer was killed when he raised his mast up to a power line.
Niles, we'll fucking out of there!
In an amazing set of circumstances, this video was shot as the tragedy actually occurred. It was a rush setup with pressure from the assignment desk. So perhaps the tech didn't notice how the crown in the road would actually bring the mast closer to the overhead wires as it was being raised. The reason you're seeing arcing on this antenna is because the power is flowing from the wire through the antenna to the center feed, down the mast, into the truck body, out the rear axle, and into the leg of the operator, who lay dead next to the curb. Here's the story of what happened to Jeff Fisher.
Delta firefighters worked frantically to try to save a life, the life of a BCTV microwave operator, victim of a tragic accident.
He was just getting out of his truck, and I stopped and talked to him and told him who I was, and he opened up that little panel up there, and he started to put that tower up. I didn't even notice it going up.
But as the microwave dish atop the BCTV van was being raised for a live hit into the new news by this reporter, it touched a power line above.
It got too close to the power lines, and as a result, the power arced and came down, and electricity passed on to your crew person. He was struck to the ground. From what we can tell, his injuries are quite serious, and he's been taken to the Delta Hospital, where he's being looked at right now.
Not long after the injured microvan operator was taken to the hospital, the questions began on how the accident could have been prevented.
Rule number 1 is look up. I mean, power lines are obviously a hazard. It's no different than setting a hydro worker working on a cherry picker. You know, look up, see where you're going.
Jeff Fisher, 36, succumbed to his injuries. His mother, 2 sisters, and a girlfriend lost a family member. And so did his colleagues at BCTV.
The story of Jeff Fisher's death did not end when Jeff died. Police and firefighters at the scene narrowly avoided potential injury when they walked dangerously close to the body and the truck, which may have still been energized. Nobody knew. But perhaps the most ironic part of this story is knowing that just 9 months earlier, Jeff Fisher had passed a written test on ENG truck operation. There are lots of lessons to be learned from these incidents. For example, what do you do if your truck makes contact with a power line? It all depends on where you are in relation to the truck. If you're alone and you're outside the truck, don't go near it. Don't touch it. Stay back and keep others away as well. Call 911 or ask someone else to get help. If your truck is touching a power line, it is no longer a truck, it is a power line. Again, stay away from the energized truck and make sure others do the same. Hop or shuffle to get away from the truck. We'll show you the proper procedure in just a moment. If you're outside with somebody else at the time your truck makes contact with a power line, it's important again to think clearly. If the other person got an electrical shock and they're injured or unconscious, do not approach them. It may be the hardest decision to make, but if you're out of danger, don't trade that for anything. Stay calm and call 911. It's a sad truth that people who try to help victims of electrical accidents may be putting themselves in more danger than the original victim. For example, in this incident, 2 photographer reporters were out on a live shot when their mast was raised into a power line. The first tech was blown clear of his contact with the truck and suffered severe burns on his arm and other parts of his body. The second person rushed over to help. It may have been her forward momentum which caused her head to touch the truck while her feet were on the ground. In other words, her body became a path to ground for the electric current. The woman was in a coma for more than a month and required multiple surgeries. Her injuries and treatment were far more extensive than those of her colleague, the original accident victim. So remember, call 911 if somebody's been hurt in an electrical accident, but don't try to help the person yourself. Keep your distance, or you might be injured as well. Now, what if you're alone and inside an energized truck? Don't leave. Clear your mind and stay calm. The wrong move might severely injure or even kill you. Use your two-way radio or cell phone to call 911 first. Yell at any bystanders to stay away and not approach the truck. If you can lower the mast without getting out of the truck, do it. As long as you stay inside and you're not touching the truck and the ground at the same time, you're like a bird sitting on a power line. You're okay. Again, if you're inside an energized truck, stay inside and don't leave. But what if you're okay, but the truck might not be? If you smell a burning odor or smoke, or if you hear a crackling noise, the truck might be catching fire. Look around, check your mirrors, sniff the air. Ask any bystanders if they see smoke. You might have to consider leaving the truck. That is a very dangerous move. People have been hurt at times when they didn't necessarily need to leave a truck, but did, perhaps because they panicked. Again, if you're okay, stay calm, look, and listen. But there have been other times when people did clear their vehicles properly. So how do you make the determination? Here are 2 reasons for leaving an energized truck. First, when an emergency services person tells you to do so. And second, when it's positively clear that you're better off leaving the truck instead of staying in it. For example, if it's on fire. First and foremost, calm yourself down and think clearly. Every move you make at this point is critical. When leaving an energized truck, you must jump clear and avoid touching the vehicle and the ground at the same time. If any part of your body touches the truck, you'll become the path to ground and be instantly injured, maybe killed. Now, when you land on the ground, you should have both feet together and your hands not touching the ground or the truck. When voltage is in contact with the ground, as it could be in the case of an energized truck, it spreads out in concentric rings, like a ripple on water. The rings have different voltages, and that difference could cause you serious harm. So if you step one foot on one ring and the other foot on a different ring, you could suffer electric shock or even electrocution. Same thing if you jump out of the truck and lose your balance, causing your feet to land on one ring and your hands on another. So keep your balance steady and your hands clear of any contact with the ground, the truck, anything. The voltage in the rings will decrease the further you get from the truck. Once you've landed on the ground with both feet still together, move away from the truck by either hopping or shuffling. If you shuffle, you must keep both feet together, touching the ground. Continue hopping or shuffling until you're a good 20 yards away from the truck. In wet weather or on wet ground, that distance should be doubled. This is a move you should practice if you work on an ENG truck. It'd be a shame to have to do this for the first time under the pressures of survival. This is not an easy jump. Try it a few times. Remember, there's no going back if you make the wrong move. It's important to know that a microwave truck can be energized in more than one way. Having the mast touch a power line is, of course, one example. Running over a downed power line is another. Plus, if a power line should fall on your truck, that would also cause it to be energized. So your duty as an operator is to avoid these scenarios by taking the proper precautions. We've already seen what happens when you don't. Electrical burns are among the worst of all burn injuries. They tend to be deeper and more extensive than surface burns. That's because electrical arcs will take the shortest path to ground as they pass through human tissue at 5 to 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember, contact is contact. The average hospitalization for an electrical burn victim is 2 months and requires 4 surgeries, and the person's family and loved ones often suffer more. Of course, the best scenario is not having to go through this in the first place. So how do you avoid an electrical accident involving an ENG truck? Well, first and foremost, you, the employee, are responsible for your workplace behavior. That means you have the last clear chance to save yourself from injury. Would you purposely take a truck, park it under a power line, raise the mast up to the point of contact with the line, and then touch the truck? Of course not. So here are some tips on how to actively avoid an accident. First, parking your truck is the most critical move, so avoid distraction. It's entirely possible that a crew would park a truck, then go off and do something else and return without checking for power lines. Then, all of a sudden, they find they have to do a quick feed, and they raise the mast without looking. Your first priority after parking the truck is to get out and look up, regardless of the circumstances and the weather. Know the area around your parking spot. When you're ready to raise the mast, always step away and look at what's around you. Get the big picture. Walk far enough away to see everything around your truck. There could be lines running pole to pole or from poles to buildings. And power lines don't always run parallel down the street. They can run in any direction. So don't think about where the power lines aren't. Think instead about where they are. All power lines are dangerous. When you set up the mast, it must be at least 10 feet from the nearest power line. That applies all around the line, not just next to it, but under it as well. And the distance increases when the voltage is higher. Here's a look at what Arizona law says about line clearances. But each state has different laws, so you should contact your local electric utility to learn the legal clearances for power lines in your state. Such laws usually include penalties for violations. So producers and assignment editors will have to realize that there will be times when a live shot just won't be possible from a certain location. Broadcasters are among the majority of the population classified as unauthorized and unqualified to be working close to power lines with an elevated structure. Simply put, we have no right or reason to be there. Here's another tip. If you're not using a wireless system, make sure there's lots of cable in your truck. So if you do need to park away from power lines, you'll still be able to get a live shot out. And make sure you have a powerful spotlight like this one. A garden variety flashlight might be inadequate when much stronger lights are available for under $50. Use your light to thoroughly search overhead. Power lines are not reflective, so take your time checking. Your life will depend on it. You should also carry a couple of reflective vests to wear at the scene of every nighttime live shot. OSHA has already cited one broadcast station for not having a written policy about nighttime work procedures. Don't wait for an accident before you decide to wear the appropriate gear. And for special events involving big crowds, you should consider securing a mast height perimeter around the truck. That would prevent any injuries if the mast is toppled over by an unruly crowd or a mechanical failure. Imagine if that happened and a power line grounded right in the middle of a public event. Now what about lightning? What should you do if you're out on a live shot and there's lightning in the area? Lightning is very dangerous, so you'll need to know how to protect yourself. We strongly recommend you obtain the latest information from the National Lightning Safety Institute, which has a website, lightningsafety.com. Find out where your station keeps a copy of the truck manufacturer's owner's manual and read it. Make a copy for every operator. Despite all we know about the hazards of operating an ENG truck, many broadcasters still roll the dice when it comes to emphasizing a safe work environment. In fact, one thing many TV news operations have in common is they don't have a safety program in place. Many stations don't even mention the word safety in their day-to-day operations. As a matter of fact, up to this point in the program, we did not mention the word safety either. Did you notice? Probably not. Now is the time to make safety a daily word and thought in your workplace. Accidents can happen at any time with even the most experienced people, but your knowledge and vigilance towards on-the-job safety will help reduce the chance of accidents now that you know how to prevent them. On behalf of SRP, I'd like to thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll not only practice the safety techniques we discussed, but also spread the word with your coworkers. It's a story they won't want to miss, because safety is always good news.